So it should be going live.
I can't see you anymore, and I don't know what I did. There you are. All
You
right.
got it. You got it sussed out. You're working with the technology. So I think we're live now. So how are you doing?
I'm happy to see you again.
I'm happy to see you too. It's been a while.
I was looking in our thread, when we had talked last, and it was in December.
Yeah. I mean, and that was after all that sort of crazy shit went down with all the videos and stuff getting removed and all that stuff. And yeah, I think we can get into that.
Well, I thought it was, and then it got worse in March. Yeah,
Well,
we can talk about that, censorship and stuff.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot there to sort of unpack, and all the stuff you've been up to since, and all the stuff I've been up to since, and it's just a load of crazy shit. So, but just for anyone who's kind of not seen our previous chats, maybe just want to, just introduce yourself, say hello. Who is Amanita Dreamer?
So I'm Amanita Dreamer, and my channel is Amanita Dreamer. And 2 years ago, I found the Amanita muscaria mushroom when I was pretty much at the end of my life, suicidal, done being here, stuck on benzodiazepines, trying to get off of them, panic, anxiety, body pain, all that stuff. A lot of people know what I'm talking about. And I found that this mushroom, it turned out it was like a real mushroom. I thought that red mushroom with the white dots was just like a stylized version of a psilocybin mushroom. I didn't know it was really a mushroom. And turns out it affects the GABA pathways and is nature's answer to panic and anxiety. And it's actually healing, So once I took that, I had tripped on that, and I never took benzos again. It took all of my pain away, all of the panic away. And that began my life of learning about entheogens and tripping and, using mushrooms and all that stuff, and having a channel, meeting you, meeting
Yeah.
other people.
So
It's
for
a
you,
whole new world.
yeah, total game changer then for you. So
Yeah.
that kind of transformation you talk about, was that like an instant thing, or was that after you worked with that mushroom for a while, it took you off the benzos, or just what was that like? Or was it like a night, like flicking a switch, like holy shit, it's gone, like I don't need the benzos anymore?
Yeah, which is bizarre because all we can conceive of is the slow way that pharmaceuticals work or don't work or make you sicker, or you have to keep trying them. So an overnight magical cure doesn't exist, and you're told it doesn't exist, except that's exactly what happened. 5 years of unimaginable hell trying to find a way to live with panic and anxiety and on benzos, trying to get off of them. And I had given up thinking I was ever going to have a life again. And I took that one large dose of Amanita by mistake. I thought I was going to be microdosing. Turns out I, large dosed it, tripped on it, woke up the next morning, and my whole life was, everything horrible in my life was gone. I realized for the first time in my life what it felt like to not live with anxiety, and didn't know that I had always been living with anxiety, pushing panic. So it's like I was born again. It is the resurrection mushroom. Like it's the giving birth mushroom, and it was transformative. I never looked back. I rarely have anxiety, and now I know why. And it's usually justified or warranted or makes sense for the situation. Other than that,
So was it that you were taking the benzos for the anxiety, or was it the benzos that gave you the anxiety?
no, I had always lived with anxiety and panic. And then Hurricane Katrina happened, and then I wound up having to relocate, losing a lot of things, filing bankruptcy. It was just this long, slow descent into
Right.
just one nightmare after another, on top of living with anxiety my whole life. Trauma, childhood trauma. And I just kept thinking, this is a nightmare. It's just never going to end. And then, finally had to get on medication. I mean, I was an emergent case. If ever there was a case to get on a benzo, I would have been a textbook case for it. And I don't fault the doctor for doing that. He saved me in that moment from just, I was such a wreck. I was not functional.
Well,
And I needed it.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things where sort of pharmaceuticals get a little bit demonized, because there is a time and a place and an application for them. If someone is like what you describe at the absolute end of the tether, then that can be the thing that just buys them that piece of space to get them out of that state. But I think the problem is that we don't really have much of a framework for then moving beyond that in terms of sort of like recuperation, sort of rehabilitation back into yourself. It's just like, okay, well, stay on these forever then. And I think that's where the kind of the real problem lies, is that there's no way off, and there's not even a sort of a willingness to explore that. You know, it's like no doctor wants to deal with necessarily somebody tapering off or withdrawing from things. It's just like, just keep taking them. They're working. Just keep shoveling these pills in, and if they're not working, take more of them. And I think that's where the problem comes in around the kind of the model we have with pharmaceuticals, not necessarily just the fact that they are pharmaceuticals.
Exactly, and I was grateful for the relief, and then had to deal with the side effects of being on the strongest benzodiazepine at the highest dose allowed, and then what that meant for my mind and my life. And from that moment on, I was unfunctional in a different way. And it was a much more pleasant way to be strung out on benzos. But then I couldn't make a grocery list.
Yeah,
I couldn't do laundry. I couldn't take care of my children. I couldn't live. I couldn't manage bills. I was non-functional. So
I see a question that just popped up in the feed, which I think you are absolutely perfect to be able to answer. And this is from Sam, and he's asking, or he or she, I'm not sure. He's asking, so what's an Amanita trip like compared to a psilocybin trip?
Well, I get asked that a lot, and there's so much contempt for this mushroom because there's a misunderstanding of some basic definitions. And that is, and this doesn't seem like it's the question he's asking, but I'm going to assert that it is the question he's asking fundamentally. And that is a trip what you see and what you hear? Because what you see and what you hear on psilocybin and what you experience there is not at all what you're going to have happen to you on Amanita. And if to you, the only reason you want to trip is because you want to leave your life and you want to see cool things and hear cool things and watch reality be distorted, you're either going to be pleasantly surprised and terrified with Amanita, or you're going to think it's a trash piece of shit mushroom and I'm full of shit. And it depends on your perspective. One, it depends on how much you take. Two, it depends on how ballsy you are. And then it depends on how strong the mushroom is, which nobody can know, and the state of your neurotransmitters. If you're a heavy weed user, you're not going to get much from it. That much I've been able to figure out. And it balances all of the neurotransmitters involved in the fight or flight system, acetylcholine and GABA, but also dopamine and potentially the endocannabinoid system. So depending on where you are with all that, it treats me differently with the exact same batch and the exact same dose from 1 week to the next. And it treats you differently if you make the tea and only 60% decarb it versus making Soma and 100% decarbing it versus smoking a shitload of it, which I did for Solstice. So there is no easy answer to that question. But if you find the sweet spot, which I accidentally did the very first time I did it, and I've done it many times since, but just as many times I have not, you never know what you're going to get. When you do, then what I've done is I made a video that's a simulation of a trip. And I've had some people that have experienced that say that's really about as close as you can get, although it's probably a 1% slice of it, because it's missing the actual experience of living out of space-time while still in the construct. So that's one thing that users should know. You can leave the construct. Like I did 8.5 grams of psilocybin and I left here. I left the construct and I was in a completely different space. So that was okay that I didn't know where I was or when I was, because I wasn't looking at anything here. I wasn't here. But when you're here and you know you're in your house and you know you're in your den and you know you're on your couch, but you can't feel anything and you can no longer judge space or time, and you don't know what year it is or if you're a child or if you're 90, and you don't know if you're married or not, or if you have children or if you even live in this house, that can be very disconcerting and unstabling for some people.
So I think, I guess, just what you were saying there is that it's just two sort of totally different, incomparable experiences. And I think from my own experience with Amanita muscaria, then yeah, if you go at it expecting something similar to DMT or psilocybin or mescaline even, it's just a completely different. You're not going to get that same kind of what most people think of as tripping, because I only say it because I think most people tend to go for those kind of tryptamine based substances more than the Amanita thing. So it's just a totally different sort of can of worms.
And then there's the heavy on the ibotenic acid side trip, and then there's the heavy on the decarboxylated side muscimol trip, and and then there's if you take that by smoking it versus drinking the tea. And so a full-on trip experience, high dose, with high ibotenic acid or high muscimol or smoking, all three trips are completely different, with different entities and different spirits and different situations. And I'm seeing questions. You want me to answer some questions? Yeah,
you go for it. You pick one out if there's one that catches your eye. I think probably the one that's probably worth answering there is from Deep Valley. Saying that they're anxious about using it and they're worried about the toxicity of it. And sorry for the dumb question, but it's not a dumb question at all. So do you want to...
No, you're told that. I mean, there's been a lot of gaslighting of this mushroom. It is toxic in the sense that ibotenic acid in high doses can make you sick, throw up, and all that stuff. And it's about how you frame it, because people don't say, I'm going to go do the highly toxic ayahuasca, which we could easily say because it makes you throw up. But you're still going to experience what you're going to experience. And some could say there's something important in that process. I've never had an ibotenic reaction like that. Some people are extremely sensitive to ibotenic acid. It is a toxin at the right dose. So then decarb it if you're sensitive to it, and push the decarb as far as you want if you're nervous about it. But that's
let's just unpack that. Let's unpack that, because people might not know what you're saying when you talk about decarbing. So what's decarbing?
So the molecule itself has a carboxylic acid on it, and you knock a hydrogen off, and that whole thing will fall off, and it turns into muscimol. So that's all you got to do. And you would think you could do that pretty easily. It's a very simple decarboxylation reaction, which should happen at room temperature, but it doesn't. And so you've got to do something to it to kick that piece off of there and convert ibotenic acid to muscimol before you put it in your body. And one of the ways you can do that is by drying it above certain temperatures, which most people do not do. But if you do dry that at around 165, what is that, 72, 75?
I don't know.
And then you'll get that. I've got it all over my website, amanitadreamer.net, because YouTube took all my content down. My channel's still there. I do mental health stuff, spiritual stuff, the nature of reality stuff, and manifesting stuff. All that's still here. But anything about this mushrooms at amanitadreamer.net, I just had to pay to host it myself because YouTube sucks. And so if you decarb with heat, you decarb 30% by drying. And then you can simmer it. I have a video on how to do that. You can simmer it and decarb another 30. You can add lemon, decarb another 30. So you can decarb however much you want. You can control that. And I assert there's a reason for keeping certain levels of ibotenic acid, that you get things out of it. I take a lot of shit for that, but I say it out of a lot of research and not just my own experiences.
Isn't there something about, though, that part of the kind of the toxic reputation comes from some of the other mushrooms, which, isn't it that people can often pick another kind of mushroom which looks like an Amanita, which is much more toxic?
I forgot about that.
Yeah, so isn't that where a lot of the reputation comes from? And I think this will tie back into the YouTube sort of censorship thing. But my understanding is that, yeah, people go foraging for Amanitas, so they're looking for this, the Super Mario mushroom, and they pick something which they think is an Amanita, which is actually pretty dangerous. And so it's that kind of has rolled over into why people think Amanita itself is super dangerous. Where I think as you've just described it, on its own, it's not really. I mean, I've sort of eaten them raw myself, and I didn't have any sort of problems with it at all. But I think it's that. There's a problem with IDing them, basically.
There's not a problem IDing them. The problem is in the written word, because people that don't really care about science or pay much attention, Amanita and then Muscaria, that's the genus, and then the species. The genus Amanita has over 600 mushrooms in it. Some are yummy, edible, choice edible mushrooms. Two of them are the most deadly mushrooms on the planet. And then 3 of them have muscimol and ibotenic acid. And then, hundreds of them, we don't know what their status is or whatever. And they range in color, and they all have ways to identify them. But if you look at the 2 most deadly ones, they're sort of like a pale army green and then a bright white. They look nothing like Amanita muscaria. So, it would be really hard to confuse the 2. There's a decent chance if you find a red mushroom, you've got a muscaria, but you could have a flava valvata or a frostiana, and they may make you a little sick or whatever, but they're not going to kill you, and you're not going to trip on them. And those are the common mistakes, but it's because people read the word Amanita and then assume deadly.
Yeah.
Because they have enough science to know that Amanita phalloides was deadly, and then they see Amanita and they go deadly. And that's been happening now for 50 years, enough that bad information has just been repeated in books, and people don't bother researching it before they write it in a blog or then repeat it in another book. And now it's just become a part of our culture that the word Amanita means deadly, and it just doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, we used to get them all over the place, and where I live when I lived in England, we lived near the forest, and there were, you'd get the kind of toadstools, and I don't know whether they were Amanitas because I was too young to identify them at the time, and it was just drilled into us, just like deadly. Just don't even go anywhere near them. Don't ride your bike near them. Don't pick them. Whatever you do, and yeah, I mean, I've got no idea now what these things were. I could have been sat on like an absolute stockpile of Amanita mushrooms as a kid, but it was just kind of bred into us. So I think that's why the perceptions are, and I think it's something we need to tackle with a bit more nuance, because it has had this I think given it this big bad PR around Amanita, and then from there I think we can probably go into what happened around your channel, and also a little bit around my channel, but certainly nowhere near the same extent as what happened with you. So yeah, I think this all kind of really kicked off around last November, wasn't it, or something? Where
the first video, my first strike was last fall, and then it was followed by another strike. But then come March, I found out in retrospect they did a whole new sweep and change in their policies to make YouTube safer for everyone. And their goal was to remove all mushroom related content. And so you'll notice all of your grow channels are gone. People who had people they watch, that taught how to grow, they're gone. But they also struck mine down. And I woke up one morning and I had all these videos taken down and strikes against them. And then, I don't know, a week later, another one, and then I got another strike, and then I was about to lose my channel. So I had to save my channel, go in and make private every video that had anything to do with the Amanita muscaria mushroom. Which is
a bit of a problem when your channel's called Amanita Dreamer. Yeah.
Right. I mean, so then the problem started. I was locked out for 3 weeks as a punishment for being who I am. And then when I got it back, the questions started all over again, like I had never made a single piece of material. What is this mushroom? Isn't it deadly? How do I make it? How do I take it? And then the bad information just started flourishing all over again in all the spaces I had already been working for 2 years.
Yeah.
So I've just been trying to say, get to amanitadreamer.net. It's free. It's on the landing page. They're organized by playlist. You don't have to give me a thing. Just go there and watch and learn and help yourself. I
mean, everything I learned about this mushroom I picked up from your channel. I mean, this is how we got in touch in the first place. So, and it was just, it was such I really felt for you watching all that go down last year, because Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I got it to a lesser degree because basically at that point, I think our channels were pretty much kind of like neck and neck. We were sort of in the same kind of region, and also there was, I think, which is something tied into this. There was a whole lot of traffic going. I got a big spike in traffic around September, October, November-ish. And and I guess it kind of tied in with the amount of foraging that goes on around that time. So there was this big spike, and like even, yeah, I think I had like 3 videos around Amanita, and they were all just kind of shooting up in views. And then the first one just got a strike against it from YouTube. And I'm kind of, I think I'm probably a bit more understanding of YouTube's position on it than you are, and I understand why you're pissed about it, because it could completely strip your channel bare. But I think they're just covering their own backs because they have this misconception that it's dangerous, and it's similar in ways that the stuff around like you get these videos of kids doing stupid things like Tide Pod challenges or whatever, and so they'll pull all stuff like that. So they just did this blanket kind of ban on anything related to Amanita, and I think, and in the process they've wiped out a lot of really helpful information, which is a total fuck up. And yeah, it sucks to see you get caught in that.
Tried to appeal everything. I sent them links to research, to articles, to prove that it is not dangerous, and that it would be more dangerous to not have the information out there, and to show all the new studies of things that it's used to treat and how beneficial it is or whatever, and that it's legal, and they still just said nope. But they removed all mushroom related content, not just Amanita.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's anything, but I mean, they didn't do anything regarding my mushroom tripping videos. So I guess maybe it's anything to do with like growing or foraging or something whereby, because it's kind of baffling. I don't think there's some kind of like agenda against psychedelics from the YouTube side, because again, they've not touched any of my sort of like DMT or ayahuasca videos or anything like that, but they've definitely got an agenda against this particular mushroom. And that's kind of what's kind of stung with everything that's happened to your channel. So like you mentioned, you moved, so you've kind of don't really use YouTube as a front end anymore. You've now sort of moved all that to your own website, which you set up.
No, now I'm just living in 2 worlds, because I'll upload. Like, I just did Mad Honey, and it was a very profound experience. I did Soma. First I made a video theorizing what I believe Soma to be. And I worked on the backs of Dr. Trent Austin and Kevin Feeney's research, making the case that Soma involved the Amanita muscaria mushroom and decarboxylating it with the lactobacteria that's found in raw milk. So then I went and experimented with it, and I made yogurt. It made yogurt when I did it. And then I went into this whole theory that I believe that Soma is yogurt, and why, and I backed that up. I couldn't upload that to YouTube, so I put that on my channel, and I made a trailer. So now every time I upload, I've got to make the video, and then I've got to make a trailer and upload it to YouTube. So then I did Soma on camera, and that was profound, and that's on my website with a trailer on YouTube. And then I did how to make Soma, again, living in both worlds.
Let's unpack that a little bit, because Soma's this kind of legendary substance. Some people saying it's psychedelic, and I think isn't it kind of origins in around like sort of the Indian tradition? That's where you hear it mentioned as this kind of one of the first things that you sort of you take it to unleash the logos, like the inner voice kind of thing. So what got you from the kind of the mythology of Soma to this recipe, where you've sort of tried it on yourself?
Well, I suck at history, because I don't understand how people decide what's true and what isn't true. Like science, I'm trained in science. I understand how to know what's true and what isn't true. So when I was looking through all of the research on this, instead of trying to start all over again and make my own theory, I worked on the backs of the people that had already done the research, and I read what it all came down to, and people that were making a case for it being cannabis, and people are making a case for it being datura, and all these different substances. And the one that made the most sense, luckily, yay for me, was the Amanita mushroom. And I really didn't have any tie to that. If it wasn't Amanita, well, then I would just move on to other things. I have a lot of content I still want to make. But when Kevin Feeney's book came out, the Amanita, the Compendium, Fly-Garrett Compendium, really thick book, by the way, they have a whole chapter devoted to defending the new position based on new research that Soma might actually be based on the Amanita muscaria mushroom. And based on the research in that book, and there's 2 chapters that talk about it, I was like, okay, I'm going to make it based on their theories and what I think they're trying to say here. So I actually just made it based on what they were saying.
So you went and got yourself some milk and just put some mushrooms in and churned it up or something, or what did you?
Yeah, I've got the how-to on my website, but no, you have to use raw milk, and we've been so gaslighted in this country about raw milk that it's evil and it'll make you deathly ill and you can't drink it and it'll give you food poisoning. And so I was really scared to do it. But once I actually looked at research on raw milk and the bacteria found in it, they found very little, like 0.1% of their samples had any kind of harmful bacteria in it. And so I quit being afraid of it. And the first time I did it, it went perfectly. It accidentally went perfectly. Like that keeps happening with me with this mushroom. And the first time I do something, it accidentally goes perfectly. And then I fuck it up after that, trying to replicate it until I figure out what I did right the first time. And yeah. So then I took it.
Well, tell us about it. Yeah, what's?
Oh, God. Okay, so I have a video on the Amanita entities. There's 3 Amanita entities that I see regularly, and I didn't make that video in for like a year and talking to other people and people that are descendants of ancient cultures who still use the mushroom. And we were all sort of in a consensus of these 3 entities. And one comes from the Ibo side, and then one comes from the 2 of them being in your body at the same time, and then one comes from the muscimol side. And when I did Soma, since it's a 100% decarboxylation, I expected it would only be the entity that comes from the muscimol side. But instead, it was the lineage of all of the mushrooms who had gone before those. Okay. And I got these from Siberia, which we now suspect were the original Amanita muscarias 32-something thousand years ago, that they first showed up in Siberia. So these were the genetic ancestors of the originals that I made Soma with. And I met the lineage of all of those mycelia and mushrooms and their wisdom. And just talking about it right now, like I'm trying not to cry. The weight of it is unbelievable. Soma tastes like nothing I've ever tasted because it's living. Okay. It was alive in a way that I don't know how to explain. I've never had food or drink that tasted like it was that many layers of alive. And it was constructing, not destructing. Okay. And as I swallowed it and felt it in my body, it was like tendrils of living beauty just immediately in my body. And from that moment forward, I couldn't put words to what was happening. But you see me go from radiant to just getting narrower and narrower, and I start slurring my words and I can't keep my eyes open, and then it goes into darkness. And the way Amanita works, and I have a video on how Amanita works and what it does for us spiritually. And it works in darkness because it deals with a lot of your locked up and repressed issues from before you were born till around 6. And a lot of people don't really write memory the same as you do after that. And so when you're recalling those experiences, it's hard to stay awake and view the world in the same way when you're unlocking what you saw as a 4-year-old, because you weren't tracking time or memory at 4 like you do today. So when you see the world through your 4-year-old's eyes, sometimes it's so painful and hard to be that dependent and scared and small in the face of trauma, that the beauty of Amanita is it sort of washes over you like a warm blanket, and beauty and this sublime, surreal distortion. And it goes, shh, okay, let's just handle this. And you go look over here. It's these beautiful things, and we'll deal with you over here. And then there's like this blackout to it. And most people say they wake up 2 hours later. There's there's something about 2 hours, but you weren't really asleep. But if anyone's watching you, you were passed the fuck out, like you weren't moving. But you know you weren't asleep, but you know you weren't awake. And then when you wake up, there's different layers of what people talk about when they come out of that. And I've had experiences of waking up wide awake and getting up and dancing and still being high and enjoying myself, to waking up and trying to get up and being paralyzed and not being able to move, to what happened on Soma, which I won't talk about here. They can go watch the video, because I express it better there than I would here. But coming out of that was what was the beginning of healing from what I did when I did 8.5 grams of psilocybin back in October. Mm-hmm. That was 6 months ago. And I have been in a funk trying to process that. And then I got hit, my channel got hit, and then I'm working, building the website, and I'm like, geez, it was really difficult. And I was beginning to think I wasn't going to get that joy back.
Yeah.
When you enter into something hard that some entheogens can put you in, sometimes that integration period can be so elongated.
It's a fucking, yeah, I think this is, I've talked about this a lot on my channel, and I think people grossly underestimate it, particularly around something like ayahuasca, where it doesn't end in the morning. That's the beginning of it, if anything, where, you can have, like you described, 6 months of just having your head completely up your ass, thinking you're going mad, or just like everything just getting on top of you, just feeling down, feeling sort of depressed. And you've got to, sometimes it's difficult to even recognize, like, oh, right, this is because of that. This is because I went through that process, because everyone just expects that you sober up in the morning and then you're good. You're kind of on your merry way to sort of tell stories about how you trip your balls off. But yeah, I think it's, especially with what happened to you, that was a kind of a perfect storm of shit going down. Of you had this super intense psilocybin experience, all the stuff's going on around your channel, and is all this kind of work going to be undone? Do you still have the sort of the get up and go for this? Can I be asked with this anymore? Because it's when you put like your heart and soul into something like that, and then it just gets pulled out from underneath you. Fucking stuff stinks. And I think you've done such a good job of pulling yourself back up by your bootstraps to sort of, build your website and say, okay, right, well, this is not working, but I'm not going to let it get me down. I'm going to move in this direction. And I think, again, that's a good integration lesson for anyone who's listening, is that, you've got to just sort of take control of your own life sometimes. And okay, that happened. You got to move forwards. And I think that's something you did really well.
I moved forward, but I was afraid the whole time, because that joy still hadn't come back. And I talk in the video, because I do the 8.5 grams on camera, and that video's on my website. And at one point in the video, I go, what the fuck? I just got scanned by a fucking alien. And then later in the video, I'm holding my head and I'm screaming. And I'm going, what the fuck? What the fuck? Ah, stop. And what had happened was those assholes in the alley held me down, ripped my head open, and started yanking stuff that they wanted out and stole it from me. And I didn't know what they took, but I knew that it was memories of things that I could never get back, that it was experiences I could never get back once they took them, and that they did something wrong by stealing that from me, and that they didn't have that cosmic right to just delve into my psyche like that and steal pieces of my experiences. So I sank into a pretty bad depression trying to figure out what they took and why and how were they able to do that. And it made me start to question the nature of reality, and could this actually be a Wild West scenario where, if it's not a simulation and it really is an organic situation, are we really that unprotected out there? Are we really that fucked? Like, are there really assholes in the alley Do you really need to learn how to do battle out there and, not go out there unprotected? Like that opens up a whole new, went through all that. And then YouTube, they don't just like say, sorry, your content violated. They punish you by locking you out of your channel. Like that's so unnecessary. And the shame that's involved in that, the language that surrounds it, the way that they treat you like a criminal, like that's so unnecessary. So then in building and, trying to get everybody to come over and watching the numbers just stop and watching you continue to grow and network. And I'm just stuck there. And all of it was so upsetting that I really had moments where I thought, I just don't think I can do this anymore. But I had my second anniversary celebration in June of being Amanita Dreamer and all of this. And I said, well, I'm going to at least celebrate. And if I can't do it after that, then I went out with a bang and I'm happy with what I did. And part of it was trying to do that Soma experiment. And in doing Soma, that was the first piece of the puzzle that integrated after that psilocybin trip. And what I learned was they took my shame, a lifetime of being gaslighted and shamed by abusers and therapists and teachers and narcissists. They took it, all of it. And I woke up the next morning and I never knew what it could be like to live without shame. I feel like I lost weight. I literally started losing weight. I lost weight, physically started, just pounds were coming off of me. And like I'm shaking trying to say it. I don't know if those of you listening are in touch with your shame. And if you are, what it would be like for your shame to just suddenly be gone.
I mean, I think everyone can relate to that because, I'm sure there's nobody on this planet who doesn't have something that they're not, ashamed of or sort of or a deep regret for. I think this is one of the things where this is why the whole kind of shame culture, cancel culture thing just completely gets on my tits, because it's like we've all sort of got stuff, in our closet that we wouldn't do it that way now, and it's just part of your learning process, of your maturation process, that oh right, yeah, I recognize I was a bit of a dick back then. I wish I was a bit less of an asshole when I was a teenager or whatever. And you carry that with you. But there's a lot of stuff in the culture at the moment where they will hold that kind of stuff against you. And I can only be glad that I was born in the era where all that stuff, all those mistakes I made as a teenager, aren't captured on Facebook and Twitter and stuff like what my kids are going to have to deal with. It's fucking insane.
So the shame that I'm referring to is the kind where, starting at very little, why didn't you tie your shoes? You're going to trip over them. I taught you yesterday. Can you not tie them? Like, you just learned that. That's shaming. Why did you spill that? What is wrong with you? Look where you're going. Watch what you're doing.
Is this coming from your parents kind of thing? Or?
Yeah. And that is shaming. And being autistic, why do you talk like that? Why don't you know what you're saying? Why don't you know what you're doing? Why does your mouth work like that? Why do you wear that? Why do you walk like that? Why do you not know that that's an inappropriate thing to say? That's shaming. And when that's all you get your whole life, from everyone you've ever cared about, every group you've ever wanted to be in, everyone you've ever loved, you feel broken and shamed and like you shouldn't exist and like you've been born on the wrong planet. My whole life was just a ball of shame of being broken and unable and unwilling, because everyone told me I was clearly intelligent, so I must be willfully being this way. And you think that's even more shaming.
And is that, I mean, there's no doubt that, people will have said stuff like that. So how do you balance that? Do you think it's that the world was just especially unkind, or do you think that you were just especially kind of sensitive to that? Was it like an accumulation of that over the years that sort of built up within you, or do you think it's just like you just the people around you were just terrible? Or
no, after 8 years of therapy and my therapists were shaming me, I couldn't do it no matter how hard I tried to fix whatever each person, place, or thing wanted me to fix when I couldn't change who I was, and I changed everything I knew I could change. And I knew that ultimately in my heart, all I did was care about people and love people.
Yeah.
Then something must be ultimately, permanently wrong with me.
And that's kind of lifted now. That's gone with the Soma.
It's gone. Oh, and the thing that Amanita does is it's the power mushroom, right? Mm-hmm. The chi, chi energy, your sense of self and owning your space on the planet. It's what it gives you, and in that way, that's how it heals depression. And instead of just boosting serotonin, which it does not affect, it goes into the psyche and replaces doubt or fear or shame with power and empowerment to own yourself, to own your beingness and the space that you came here to take up on the planet, to submit your ego as a good and positive way to experience the planet within your own heart of love, because it is also the heart chakra mushroom, so that you see the world through your heart, and then you're empowered to affect love and change on the planet when you're no longer doubting everything that you say and do and experience and believe and are. Then you are empowered. And after that, I finally owned Amanita Dreamer, but also my sense of self and the right to be here. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like me, move along. I'm not going to be what you want me to be. I'm not going to act like a girl or a guy. I'm going to be me, and I'm going to like what I like and say what I say, and I'm going to know what I know. And I'm not arrogant. I'm too self-critical and scathing with myself. And I love people, and I want to help people. And now I can own that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of when you put yourself out on something like YouTube. You just get so many expectations of people telling you should be like this, and I get it all the time, and I know you get it. We've had our first share of mutual crazies who've invaded far too much of our time. But people saying, oh, you need to be more high consciousness like this. You need to be more spiritual like this. And I'm like, fuck you. I'm gonna be me. That's all I can be. I can only be me. Whatever your idea of psychedelics is or spirituality is, I don't give a fuck. That's not me, like I said, being particularly arrogant. It's like, I can only do me. This is just my life, and I'm not trying to. If I wanted to live my life according to the playbook, I would go and join a religion. I'd go and join a cult. If I wanted someone to dictate to me, what the rules are around my consciousness and my spirituality and my experience. But I don't. So I'm not interested in when people says, oh, you should do this. This is the most spiritual. You shouldn't say this about this. It's like, no, I'll do it my way. Fuck you.
The most sacred thing on the planet is anyone's autonomy to be the way they feel like being here, and experiencing it the way they wish to experience it. It's not the mushroom that's sacred. It's just a fruit of a mycelial body. And it's not how I take it that's sacred. What's sacred is what I do with it, because it's how I want to do that. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. I think the things like the mushrooms are tools in the toolbox. It's a way of I think when people refer to them as teachers, it's something that helps us align to live our lives the way we want to live them. But I mean, that is the key. It's live your life the way you want to live it. And I think there's another thing there where I get sort of criticized for, where I'll say something like that, and then they'll say, well, but you criticize somebody for doing this and that, and I will have opinions on other people's ideas, particularly if they're trying to put out authoritarian ideas saying you must do this, or you're doing it wrong, or I am this, or I am that. Then I will challenge those ideas, and I think having a dialogue, and even a critical dialogue, is absolutely fine. And I'm never impressed by people who are trying to be authoritarian on these subjects. And like I said, we've had our fair share of those. I still get messages from that fucking weirdo, the one who posts all the biblical shit. Yeah. He's got I think I've banned or blocked with 20 different accounts from that guy now, who just constantly posts the same nonsense. But if you're listening, Vincent, we don't read any of it, mate. It just gets blocked, so don't save your time, dude. I see a couple more questions coming in regarding from Amanita, so I'll just put this here. This one from I don't know if it's Dacty Zero. He was asking, I was wondering if you know about Amanita citrina. And then there was another one a bit further down where I was asking about, have you ever tried to smoke Amanita pantarina? I hope I'm pronouncing those things right. So
Yeah, I haven't tried citrina, and I have pantherina with me, and I'm going to smoke it soon, but I wanted to take a break from June. I've been just working really hard, and Soma and Mad Honey, and so I just want to now come down and process it. But next on my list is a smoked pantherina. It's 4 to 10 times stronger than Amanita muscaria, but I do make oil extracts of both, and I've used pantherina oil extract orally, which I can't recommend anyone do because there's zero science on it. It shouldn't exist and it shouldn't be a thing because the actives are water soluble, not fat soluble, so they shouldn't extract, and yet they do. Okay. So I'm trying to get some information about that and why it does that. But since I don't know why it's doing it, I also don't know what chemicals are being extracted. So I've been experimenting on myself with the Amanita muscaria extractions and the pantherina extractions. And I've had an experience on the pantherina extraction, but I still don't feel comfortable discussing it at length yet for fear of other people going and doing it. And I don't feel comfortable talking about something that I don't even know what I'm dealing with yet. But my oil extracts that I sell, I made for topical use because that was from an old Russian recipe for pain, and it works. It's amazing. It actually really works. And people were skeptical. I've sent it to them for free. They've tried it. They're like, wow, holy shit. Like, yeah, that's cool. And then to plug my store, I make smoked blends with Amanita muscaria with other things that I've done research on stacking and how they stack well. Anyway, my Etsy store sells out usually in 24 to 48 hours because of this right now. And then I'm doing a free workshop for the Psychedelic Society of San Francisco on Friday. I'm working to restock the store. So here in the next 24 to 48 hours, I'll restock it and hopefully make some money to pay the website bills another month. And the oils are there also. And now I'm working on like a super healing thing based on some properties of Amanita where it is antibacterial, boosts the immune system, anti-inflammatory. And then I'm also working on an anti-aging serum based on old Russian Sami Siberian use, where women put it in creams and put it on their skin or whatever. So I'm experimenting with that. I'm trying to take pictures like once a week and see if I can see a difference in my skin or whatever. Yeah,
we'll put a link after we finish the live stream. We'll put a link in the description below.
I'll drop my link tree in the comments real quick.
Okay.
There you go. Thanks.
Okay, we've got another couple of questions here. I think so. This one's from Anthony Lovell, and I think this is one I think we can both take a stab at. So he's saying, "How do I lose my fear of psychedelics? As I want to experience them again, but since my last Bufo experience, I can't do it. Please help." So because I wonder if you get the same kind of thing as what I get when I go into like a sort of a trip to means like a mushroom trip or something. Do you still get that kind of like pre-trip anxiety with using something like Amanita, or are you just like fucking gung ho for it now?
I get it with everything except Amanita.
Okay.
I have this feeling with the Amanita that they will always have my back and always protect me, and I always feel safe going in. But everything else, no, I'm scared to death. Especially since Mad Honey's deadly, like it can kill you. That was scary.
So you were nervous then going into that 8.5 gram psilocybin?
Oh yeah! Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I every single time I'm like, what do I really want to do this? So what advice can we give to Anthony then? Like, how can you lose fear of psychedelics? I think what I would say, mate, is what I try to do is just remind myself like why I want to do. So I sometimes write it down on a piece of paper. And this is what a lot of people say about writing an intention. So like maybe a day or so before the fears really kicked in, because I find it just kind of ramps up on the actual day or a few hours before. So before you get to that space, just write down why you're doing this and why you are allowed to have this kind of experience, and that you are allowed to experience, the divine and the transcendent, and And all you've got to do is then just find the courage to get to the side, because you know what you want, and you know that maybe this is what you need. But yeah, if you leave it to that moment, you will find a million and one ways to talk yourself out of it. So you've got to have the reason before you get to that spot. Have you got any sort of tips of what you do before that, or you just find the right moment and go for it?
Well, for me, it's more about, why am I doing it? And if it's to have fun, then I'm probably not going to do it, because there's the getting over the fear part, and that's not fun. But if I'm doing it because I want to grow, because I want to learn something, because I want to get out of some false beliefs or something, then it's medicine. And then there's a purpose to it. So then it's like anything else in life. Why do you take the trash out? So it won't stink up your house. Like, why do you go to work? So you don't become homeless. Why do you take your medicine? So that you can grow. So once I know why I'm doing it, then everything else is just life experiences.
Yeah.
So any one moment is just a life experience, even if it's shitty. Like, it's still just a moment of a life experience. It's just a life situation. And if you've been in enough shitty life situations, you know that you got out of it.
Yeah.
And so it's like being on a scary roller coaster, or jumping out of an airplane, or doing anything that is terrifying. Once you're committed to doing it, then it's just put one foot in front of the other and move through the motions. Make the tea. I make the tea with the psilocybin. And then you drink the tea and you make it taste as good as possible, and you sit with it in the moment and you drink it. Then it don't matter what you think. Then it doesn't matter if all you got to do is get to that moment where you're drinking the last of it and set it down, because after that, you're hands off anyway. Yeah.
At that point, you've bought the ticket, and then, I mean, I think that one of the things here, which I've kind of come to realize, is that we spend so much kind of effort trying to exist within this perfect slice of like happiness, and like treating anything that's not that as if it's some kind of pathology, like, oh, like sadness and loneliness and grief or whatever, like as though these are things to be avoided, as like they just should not exist. But they're like part of our human experience. And the way I've kind of approached things like psychedelics is that if that's the experience I need to have, if I need to experience, like you were talking about before, like the 4-year-old self, that the 4-year-old part of me that's losing, a parent, and it feels abandoned or lonely or abused or whatever, then that was kind of my experience. It's not something to be swept under the rug, and maybe it's something you need to deal with. So, and I think that's something we should try and get over in our mindset, is like we should only want the lovely, happy, trippy, psychedelic fireworks. We should, and I think when you described it as we should try and grow, I think that's exactly right. And sometimes to grow, you've got to turn over the soil a little bit and pull up some dark, stinky weed roots and stuff like that. But so I don't know if that.
Also, if you want to get to your death and be okay with your death and be joyful about getting old and getting a day closer to your death, you can't get there by staying in a comfort zone. You get there by experiencing fearful things and overcoming them, and difficulty and overcoming it, so that you realize nothing is really that awful. You can look back on it and go, how did I do that? I don't ever want to experience that again. But also, you're learning to die to the past, because yay, I grew. I'm actually a different human because of it. Then you go through something joyful, and then that leaves. And you're like, okay, well, I keep landing right back here. I go through something hard, and then I go through something joyful. And every time it's going to change you, and you're going to grow. You're either going to learn life is short and you better get to getting because you got shit to do, or you're going to learn, okay, I can get through adversity. And either way, when you learn that, you die to that moment, and then you move to the next one. And when you learn to die to your youth, you learn to die to your knee not hurting, because now it's going to hurt every day.
Mm-hmm.
And you die to the fact that you can't hang on to the people you want to hang on to, and you learn to let them go. And when you die to money and you learn to spend it so that you can bring new things into your life, when you learn to let go, then you're learning to die to every moment. And that is how you get to old age gracefully, and I would say joyfully, so that you can embrace being old and peeing in your pants and having to have somebody feed you if you're lucky enough to get that old, and be okay with it. And if you can do that, then you only did it through experiencing really shitty experiences and really beautiful experiences. Because if you create a comfort zone and live there, and you think the goal is to win by staying as comfortable as possible, I would say the older you get, the more uncomfortable you're going to get, and the harder it's going to be to maintain that until you're just fucking old and miserable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is, I don't know if there's a book I was been reading called, shit, I'm going to totally forgot what it's called, but it's The Immortality Key by Brian Murray.
Yeah.
It's fucking brilliant, and it's all about the kind of the Eleusinian mysteries, this kind of set of ceremonies that they would do in Greece, where they would do exactly what you've just described. You would go through this very challenging experience over a period of like 7 days, and it involved like trekking some distance and then taking in all this kind of theory. And at some point you would go through what they reckon was a fairly profound psychedelic ceremony in this kind of spectacular Greek location with all the pillars and, you know, all that kind of one of these temples going on. And with the idea being that you would reconcile the notion of your own death, and that you would, at that point, you would stop fearing death because you'd already experienced it. And certainly, I know I've had similar experiences to that, sort of an ayahuasca or something like that, where, you know, you have these experiences where it feels like you're dying, and you are absolutely convinced in that moment you are dying. And it does it. It's kind of that, you know, it's the classic, that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And so I would encourage people to, seek out the challenging experiences, not to a point where it's kind of, you know, you're being flippant about it. You know, these are things to be respected, but I don't think they're things to be cower in fear from. If you just reach out. So I hope that's something useful for you there, Anthony. A question here from Dino. He's asking, are you guys interested in mescaline? So like the cactus side of things. Have you thought about experiencing something like that, like peyote or San Pedro?
I mean, I might do it to say I did it, but so far it's not calling to me. And from what I've heard from people, it tastes like ass. It makes you really nauseous, and then it's just sort of Like,
I wouldn't say it's definitely, it's not. I mean, the first part's true. It tastes. I mean, depending on how you do it, if you can basically get it as like a cactus smoothie, and it's fucking vile. I wouldn't say it's as bad as ayahuasca in terms of like how bitter it is. It's just it's kind of gross. It's slimy, and there's a lot of it. It's like it literally is like a big smoothie rather than a little egg cup sort of full like with ayahuasca. But in terms of the effect of it, it's fucking incredible. It's I mean, it's actually a well-timed question, Dino, because Rachel and I, we're going to a San Pedro ceremony, not this weekend, the weekend after that. And Rachel's been a few times, and she absolutely loves it. She thinks it. I think she talks about her healing journey with San Pedro the same way you talk about yours with Amanita. But it's fucking, very psychedelic. It's kind of, I would say it's like kind of almost like a cross between one of the tryptamine psychedelics and something like MDMA. It's got that kind of body glow to it. So yeah, Dino, I'll probably be doing some videos regarding mescaline and San Pedro in the next couple of weeks when I get back from this retreat. Let's see. So someone's saying, this is from my mate, from Elf Machine, saying in Vermont, which I'm guessing means the Amanitas, they are orange as opposed to red. So is that is this just one of the different genuses then, or can you have the exact same type of mushroom, but it's just got different color variations and stuff?
Yeah, it's really interesting. In Europe, they have the red one, and they descended from Siberia down through Europe and then all the way over west, right? But the ones that traveled east out of Siberia went over to Russia and crossed that land bridge, the Bering Strait, during the Ice Age, when there was land there,
Yeah.
over into Alaska. And from there, they changed and became all of the different Muscaria varieties that we have in the States. And they don't know why they didn't do that in Europe, but they did do it here. So the ones in Vermont are Gasawi. So they're Amanita Muscaria vargasawi.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you, 'cause I know that you've been doing some stuff around like creating I don't know what would you call, like a retreat or a getaway or something? What's going on there?
We are celebrating the solstice. So it just happened this past weekend, and I'm going to do it now every summer and winter solstice. And people came from all around, and we came to this one place, and we did Amanita together and summoned the ancestors and the elders like our DNA past is used to doing, with drums and ceremony and smoking it and getting in touch with the ancestors, and something that our human being ancestor people have done for thousands and thousands of years on the solstice. And there's something very sacred about it, and it was beautiful. I've done it a lot myself, but not with a lot of other people coming together with their own intentions and everything like that, like our ancestors used to do it. It was amazing. And it went for 2 days, and we did 2 drum ceremonies, one the day before and then one on solstice. So it was really amazing. And I think I'm going to do it again for winter. But if anyone wants to know about it, there's a retreat tab on my website, but I haven't updated it for December because I just did it, and I'm still trying to empty boxes and get resettled after it. But it was amazing and transformative. It's something the mushroom just called me to do. It's something the mushroom wants us to start doing again. Amanita used to enjoy favor among humans as being the most commonly used entheogen mushroom medicine on the planet. It was easy, it was available, it grows everywhere, and it's such a good medicine, not just mental health wise and not just spiritually, but physically, for nervous system disorders and for boosting immunity. And so it's just been one of those highly revered things. It's why it's so iconic and still is today. And so it has been, like, it talks about it when I commune with it. It says, we've been through a divorce and we'd really sort of like to patch things up again. And so it's really been part of my job to become Amanita Dreamer, be public, and get the word back out and ask everyone to remember our relationship to this mushroom, because it really wants to get back in touch, and our beingness needs it. We are becoming so broken as a species on the planet and so sick. And so it's not the be all and end all. It takes a lot of different entheogens for each person, I think, to get their perfect mix and get where they got to get. But there's no denying this mushroom has always been a part of our lives.
Well, I mean, I just want to give you some kudos for doing that with what you did around this solstice thing, because I think that the whole vibe around community, and when we talk about psychedelic community or spiritual community or anything, it's and I think for most people that when you talk about something like the psychedelic community, and you really just talk about something that exists online, it's this online thing, but really I think what we're all calling out for is some kind of like face-to-face thing. We want a community. We want people to be around, and so we can build sort of friendships and build connections. But on that same breath, we're also fucking scared of opening ourselves up and reaching out to people, or at least I am. Anyway, I'm terrible. I'm so antisocial. I'm terrible. But so for you to do that, where you've kind of like planted a flag, like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be here at this place and you can come and join me. I think that is such an awesome thing. I've toyed around with doing it myself, and it's always been that fear of, can I shoulder this burden? Can I be the ringleader here? Because again, there's something there that's kind of repugnant. I don't want to be the one in charge. But you just want it to kind of happen organically. But someone's got to do it. Someone's got to be the organizer. And so that you've done it, I think, is just such an awesome thing. And I'd hope that one day I'll get out there and do it with you, because I'd love to be there and bang some drums with you. I want to tell you this. Do you know what? I have not touched my fucking drum at all this year. Like there's just been this mental block between me and my drum. That's like I touched it one time when I was tripping, but I just cannot. It's like I don't know. There's just like a mental wall between me and it, and I don't know what it is. Something I need to get over just to sort of pick it up and bang some shit out. But
I can tell you what it is.
Go for it.
It's a power control issue, because drums ask you to drop all of your sense of power and control and to let the entheogen or the voice or the creativity use you as a vessel, and then let it move through you. But to do that, you got to let go of some construct you've built if you got to get a lot of work done, and you're just afraid some issue's going to come through, and you're going to start crying, and you're going to get worried, or you're going to get stressed, and you really just wanted to play your damn drum, and you've got to get back to work or whatever, you've got to be a father and whatever. Then it can get really hard to do that, because it will unearth things before it gets to that creativity flow point. And I think sometimes you can just hang on a little too tightly to your construct and the world that you've built that you've got to get stuff done in. And you don't want that to get rocked by anything that drum might unearth.
I think part of it as well with me is just I'm such a control freak that I don't like not being perfect at something, and it bugs me. Like I want to, like I see somebody play the drum. I see some I watch some videos of some absolutely amazing sort of frame drummers, and I'm like, I want to do that so much, but my shitness in the meantime to get there, I'm just like, I don't like listening to my own how crap I am at it, and I don't actually think I'm that crap at it, but it's just I just can't get over myself, and I need to. So Rachel keeps saying to me, like, do you want to play your drum? Do you want to play your drum? I'm like, maybe tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. It just, I need to commit a bit harder to the drum. But
that's why a drum circle is so important, because you're only one voice among all of them, and if one person descends into chaos, everyone else will hold you and hold space for you till you can make your way back.
Well, that not just drum circle, that's why community is so important. That's because sometimes you just need that group around you to pull you out of your own ass, and it's you don't, sometimes you feel like you need to retreat into yourself, and you feel like this thing to do, but then before you know it, you're a fucking hermit, and you've been staying in, and it's winter outside, and now there's a fucking pandemic, and now the society's collapsed around you, and you're just you just shut yourself off from everything. So I'm trying to rectify that a little bit. That's one of the reasons I want to go to this San Pedro retreat. I just need to get out of my own fucking head for a moment.
Can I say something?
Please do.
I was looking in the comments over here, and Beth Lee asked, is microdosing possible? Not only is it possible, but it's absolutely pertinent to its use. And I harp on that over and over and over and over. And I get a lot of shit from the recreational users that's all they think it's worth. Mm-hmm. I attest that its greatest value is in microdosing. It helps the most people in the largest way through microdosing more than anything else.
And what's a microdose just in terms of?
Everybody's got to find their own. I teach you how to make it. You have to set up, measure out 15 grams so you avoid hot dosing, because any one mushroom can be 100 times stronger than any other mushroom, and it's not by size. So you make a lot of them. I'll break them up and use pieces of different ones to come up to a 15-gram tea that I then part into fourths and freeze 3/4 and then keep 1/4 out. And then you have to find your dose all over again, because you're dealing with a whole new batch. And I have what I know my dose is. Other people's doses are 2 or 3 tablespoons, whereas for a while, mine was a half a teaspoon. I've gone up since then. I'll go back down since, in the future.
Is that half a teaspoon of the tea, or is that half a teaspoon of the dried?
The tea.
Right, okay.
No, the tea. It's not so good to take it microdosing dried or raw. It doesn't give you the same effect what microdosing will give you and do for you. The tea seems to be the best way to use it for microdosing. Smoking is not going to give you the same effect. That's for getting in touch with elders, or in the moment when you just want to de-stress and come down. Like instead of drinking a beer, I hit my smoke blend every day in the evening, and I come down and I can breathe, and then I start my evening. But when I want to go to bed and I'm starting to have anxiety about something that I've got to do or something that's coming up, then I'll go back on my microdosing protocol, which I've also made a video about my personal microdosing protocol. But I'm not a doctor, and that is not medical advice. It is based on anecdotal information, aggregated and put together into what seems like the best protocol that serves the most people. But that's only what I do, and I'm translating the information that I'm getting from other people. But I am not a mycologist. I am not a doctor. I am not a shaman, and this is not medical advice.
So, I mean, it's good that you sell that, because what was your role then within the solstice event you did? Were you kind of, were you taking this kind of like, you know, shamanic sort of role there, or was it just, was everyone on like an equal footing, or how did it play out when in the kind of, you know, when you were doing these drum circles and stuff?
I felt like a shaman when I was making, you know, like I got them from Siberia. And so when I was making everything to get it ready for the ceremony, to present it to everyone to use, it felt like an act of love and a shamanic act to make it available and to create ceremony for everyone and to clear the space energetically, and to the shakers and the drums, and to help everyone get in that headspace that I felt like the Amanita feels is conducive, you know, that taps into what we've always done in our past. And in that way, I guess I was being a shaman. But I told them, use it however you want, take as much as you want. I used it freely in front of them. I said, remember, I'm good at this. Didn't do it in a long time. This is what I know. Like, so don't base it on what I do. You know, you do what you should do. And then, I don't know, at some point in the ceremony, like I just wanted to dance. So I was dancing out in the middle of the room, and I felt one person's energy, and it was stuck and it wasn't moving. And I just went over there and thought, well, if I smile and sort of lend love, maybe they can move it. And I found myself just doing this really like cool dance, like entertainment, moving playfully, like, you can do this. This is, you know, breathe, you've got this. And then the next thing I knew, it's like I could feel their energy and feel it moving. So that was cool. So then I just went around to each person and just did that, and sort of felt like I was like an emollient to the situation, and to help, because it was in what felt like a really tough spot. You could just feel the tension in the room of everyone sort of at a place where they were really uncomfortable and really needed to move what they were moving. They were meeting resistance. And it was really interesting to feel that, to be able to feel that. But other than that, I mean, I guess that's what a shaman does, but I certainly did not say, this is the amount that you should now take. I don't, that's too personal to me.
Are you still interested in that sort of shamanic route? Because I remember one of our previous times we talked, you said you're interested in maybe doing like an ayahuasca sort of retreats at some point. Is that something you're still interested in doing?
I don't know. Right now is a bad time to ask me, because I'm still coming off of the Soma. And I did them a week apart, Soma and then Mad Honey, and they were both extremely profound.
And are they different? Is that a different experience between those two even?
Oh yeah, completely.
Well, tell us a bit about the Mad Honey then. What goes on with that?
Well, first of all, Mad Honey's deadly, and I'm not telling you to do it. And if you buy Mad Honey, you damn well better do your research, because it'll kill you, and it's not for everybody.
Okay.
I said that.
Disclaimer noted. But I wound up taking, I don't know, maybe half a teaspoon of it. And is this something did you make it yourself, or did you get it from
you
someone?
buy it. It comes from the bees in Nepal on a cliff, and their hives and the comb and everything are on a cliff, and they have to like rappel down with ropes to harvest it.
Holy shit.
And they get their pollen from rhododendron flowers, which are toxic to humans, and that makes their honey deadly, like poisonous.
Okay.
But turns out it's also an entheogen and psychedelic, and I couldn't find anything about why or how it works. So I was really afraid, but all that's on camera. I took it on camera. I show how I dose it, wait, dose it again, wait, dose it again, which I think is the safest way to approach it. But the maximum amount you can take in a 24-hour period is a tablespoon, and I didn't even approach that. But I'm also a lightweight. I mean, I'm like 125 pounds. I'm 5'1", so I'm a lightweight. But it was the most beautiful experience I've ever had on an entheogen. The most sublime. It's the one that leaves me the most speechless and the most unable to describe the experience. It was a whole body sensation of the most sublime, blissful, amazing, beautiful experience that I would say easily rivals an orgasm. An orgasm would be crude compared to the experience that I had. And
what's the active ingredient in that? Do you know? Like, what is it? That's
Rayanotoxin.
Rayanotoxin.
Grayano.
Okay.
Grayanotoxin. And I want to do it again, but it feels so holy and sacred to me now. And it is such a rare thing and sacred and hard to harvest. And there's such a small amount of it available in the world that I also don't want to abuse the experience. I'm going to hang on to that experience for a really long time before I do it again. Then I also microdosed it before I microdose everything before I take it in a large amount.
Yeah.
So that my body can learn what it is and I can learn about it. But also I start getting pieces of information of it. You know, I don't know why I do that, but
it's just a sensible way to, I mean, you know, people ask me like, how much DMT should I do on my first time? And I always say a very small amount, you know, start. I mean, you start small, you've got nothing to lose. You know, there's no, you don't get a medal for jumping at the deep end and find out you absolutely hate this experience. So just start small and work your way up.
It wasn't, I didn't see colors like as the come up and the first thing you notice is everything's brighter or more colorful. It wasn't that. It was more of a laughter kind of alcohol feeling. But it very quickly started being, instead of an up or down experience, it became a sideways experience.
Okay.
And instead of feeling like I left and went upwards and outwards, it felt like I stepped into an alternate reality by stepping sideways, and that I stepped into the bee world. And I felt my body buzzing. I heard the sounds of wings, and I could see the world through the colors that a bee sees the world. You know how they have that UVA, whatever way that they see the world? That's how I could see the world. And I felt the wind on me. I felt the warmth of the sun. And I flew through flowers.
Through your bee pelt, through your stripy bee pelt.
Yeah. It was unbelievable what a flower sounds like and feels like. The bliss of a flower's petals just raking down your body as you fly through it. The feeling of pollen stacking on you. There's this urge to get to pollen that's so strong. It was an unbelievably strong urge to get to that flower and feel the pollen. And it was blissful as that pollen packed around me. I just felt like the most amazing love in the universe. And like I was humming with that flower and the flower was humming with me. And it was in line with the universal hum.
Wow. I actually had a very similar experience to that when I did Bufo, so like the 5-MeO DMT from the toad. And
really?
Yeah, and for a moment, my consciousness was within the toad, but I wasn't me anymore. I was this toad. Yeah. My entire perception, the way my brain worked was completely alien It was just wired up completely differently, and I felt like I was a toad having a dream about being a human being who smoked some 5-MeO DMT, when I came around from it, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, because it was being a different species. And I think this is something that like we as human beings kind of struggle with a little bit. We, even when we talk about sort of like the afterlife or something, we're always imagining us as we are going up to the afterlife or whatever. But really, you're talking about transitioning to something completely different from, whatever you were at that point. It's like the caterpillar becomes the butterfly. It's no longer the caterpillar. It's nothing like it anymore. And that's what this was. The thoughts going through my head, and the way those thoughts that were going through my head, and the way I was perceiving the world was just, I completely alien. And I don't mean alien as in like extraterrestrial. I mean alien as in like not a mammal anymore. I felt amphibian. And my thinking was amphibian, and just everything about me felt I was within this amphibian experience. And it was an incredible experience just for how fucking weird it was. But yeah, it was kind of shocking. I'd only ever experienced it that one time doing Bufon. It was like, holy shit. I remember like for a moment, like the thought was going through my head as I was coming, like, does this toad know what it's capable of? Like, is this toad completely immune to this, what's happening within its own body? Or, it's just us humans who are just getting off on it? Or is this toad like permanently living in this 5-MeO DMT state, which is fucking bananas? It's such a powerful experience. So yeah, I can relate.
If that's the case, if you do something a frog makes and then you can embody his reality, hers. If I can embody the reality of a bee, then are we embodying the reality of a mushroom?
Well, I think so. And I think this is, when people talk around stuff like spirits, like the mushroom spirits, the plant spirits, and I think there's, a lot of skepticism of that view, because it's straight away sounds very woo-woo-y. But I think if you have a living thing, and you take a living thing into, then I think you are. I think at that point, it's not necessarily just a piece of protein, or a piece of protein with some fiber. There's, consciousness is a thing. I don't see any reason why, a bee is certainly conscious. I think I'm kind of in the camp where I think, there's no reason to believe that trees and mushrooms are not conscious. When people say, well, they don't have nervous systems. Well, they do. It's just a different kind of fucking nervous system. They don't have a squishy brain, but there's certainly shit going on. The leaves are reacting to their light. They're releasing, seeds and certain pheromones at certain times. So they certainly have some kind of, nervous system going on. So yeah, why would they not be conscious, just on a completely different time scale and a completely different way of processing it? And certainly you feel it when you take something like that into yourself, like mushrooms or like, ayahuasca or any of these kind of plants. Yeah, you are merging some of your consciousness is merging with that, and you end up with these incredible experiences. So yeah, and I think if you do something which is potent enough, like the mad honey you described, or like the 5-MeO DMT from a toad, then yeah, why not? You just get these kind of two fields of consciousness just kind of merge into each other, and the boundaries dissolve, and you have these experiences. So I think there's something there, but I realize it definitely goes into woo-woo territory. But I think that's what people refer to when or like shamans, when they refer to the spirits, they're just referring to that kind of merging of fields of consciousness. And in fact, there is actually there's a guy I talked to who's a psychedelic researcher. So he's studying like the science of consciousness, and he's got all these theories around sort of fields of consciousness which are sort of collapse back into each other, and boundaries between them are sort of dissolve into each other, so you end up with these kind of bubbles in consciousness kind of thing. Fascinating guy. And this is why when you do some of these experiences, you merge with something else, which is like what you described with the bee, or what I described with the toad. And sometimes you feel like you've merged right back to source, because your kind of bubble has just expanded. All the bubbles, like soap bubbles, are just growing into each other, and so you end up with something where you feel like a sense of lineage, and you feel a sense of stretching back in time. So yeah, it's one of those things where I think I don't know what to think about that shit anymore. Actually, I think it's all perfectly feasible, and that's certainly what it feels like. So
I've been in a state of speechlessness now for 3 weeks since I experienced it, because it made questions like the nature of reality be in my head in ways that I just keep running into dead ends, but then going off in other very amazing conclusions for myself that scare me. Because if that is any indication of where I'm headed, if I think I'm strange now, like, I'm going to be so fucking weird if I keep doing this. Because it just feels to me now like even a bee has thoughts and feelings and goals. Because I felt in that moment what my goals were. And I knew I had worked my whole life to get to that point, that this was graduation for working so hard in the hive and getting to a point where I can now fly and gather pollen and take it back. And it just felt like I was fulfilling a destiny that felt sacred. And if a bee has goals and a life mission and a destiny and a journey and needs and this blissful feeling, everything does, including the plants and the trees and everything. And I may actually be one of those weirdos that's like wanting to protect every living thing on the planet, everything, which you can't really do. But it's also made me very aware of suffering now, much more aware of suffering. And I'm taking much better care of the plants now on my balcony. And if I see bees struggling, I try to get water for them. And now I'm just becoming like weirder.
I don't think it's weirder at all. I mean, I think the drive not to cause suffering, I think I don't think that there's not much of an obvious reason why we would want more suffering. And I think I think there's a bit of a confusion there around suffering versus, because then, if, like I say, if we had the conversation that plants are kind of sentient in their own way or have a consciousness, then are we causing suffering to the plant when we, is being a vegetarian that much better than being a meat eater here and stuff like that? And I don't buy into that part of thing. I think that, I don't think there's anything particularly unethical around eating meat. I don't think there's anything, because then again, if there is, then we find out that the plants are conscious, and we're completely fucked. But I think eating a natural, but I think what humans do wrong is that we can just disconnect from the suffering of other creatures and then do these grotesque things like factory farming and stuff like that. So I think that is wrong. I think the way that we humans cultivate our diet through these fucking horrific I don't know what word, just yeah. When you see a documentary that's got like a pig farm on it or a kind of, it's just fucking brutal.
And I wish I had never seen any of it going into all of this, because now I'm just so much more aware of it. And already just being autistic, I'm already that much more sensitive, and it's harder for me to control my thoughts and not go to bed and then have all of that invade me before I can fall asleep, like the amount of suffering on the planet. So I try to limit my exposure to it while also doing anything that I can, and when I can, to start working toward something. I don't know what that is yet, but I'm sure I'm getting there. And then, we've done studies with trees and plants that they do emit high-pitched screams of sorts when they are cut and damaged. And if they can send out alarms that are just out of our hearing range, and they feel stress and they have cortical stress responses, how do we not know that is not a feeling for them? And so then that would mean, vegetarianism would in some ways be just as disgusting as what we could do to animals, and what is suffering. And then if you take a fruit, is that okay? The same way we cut our hair, because it's supposed to leave. It's got the seeds. It's supposed to go.
Yeah.
Versus when the body dies naturally, like there's a tomato plant, it dies off in the fall normally. That's its lifespan, and it lived its destiny, and that is part of its dying. Versus yanking it out of the ground because a couple of leaves are starting to turn or whatever. And so you just throw it out on the ground, and then you've upended its life. Did it feel shock? Is it terrified at that point about what it's going to do for subsistence and its death? And if you're just going through raking down trees, like not only what you've done to the fungi in that ecosystem and the plants and the animals in that ecosystem, but trees have neighbors and mates and offspring that they support and protect. Like, is that a massacre? Did you just watch a massacre? And that's how it feels to me when I see that. There's a lot of it happening around where I live. So all of this has just my brain hurts lately, and I don't sleep a lot lately because of and that lends credence to the concept that a bad trip is not necessarily a bad trip. Because what I did with Mad Honey was the most beautiful experience that has sent me on the most horrific thoughts and headspace to try to come to terms with.
Yeah, sometimes you need that kick in the ass, though, isn't it? That's sometimes you need to be exposed to something that's outside of your kind of bubble. And again, that's why I would encourage everyone. Yeah, don't necessarily shy away from the deep waters. Sometimes that's the way to grow. But yeah, I think where I would just on the thing around what you're saying around plants and trees and stuff, I think where I would try and draw the line is it's that exploitation thing. So I think if, like I say, I don't have a problem with eating meat. If there's if there's a deer that's killed, like that's is there something wrong necessarily with eating that or using its skin? I don't think so. Is the lion unethical for killing the zebra? I don't think so. But I think the point where we start exploiting stuff, and even exploiting trees, when I've been in Peru, and you see the Amazon and it's magnificent, but then you see parts of it where it's just growing like palm oil trees or it's being exploited. That they've stripped out everything, that's all the diversity, and they're just growing one kind of plant because it's profitable, and that's just as grotesque, I think, as the battery farm. Obviously, it's not making the same kind of noises that the battery farms are making. It's not got the same kind of lakes of blood pouring out of it, but it's this exploitative part of ourselves, which I think that's what we need to try and work out what we're going to do, especially since there's so many people on the fucking planet at the moment.
Somebody, Gulav Jaman, he said he could only find one video about my smoking Amanita, but it seemed like an experience I wouldn't recommend. Did you film a better experience? I didn't film any other experience of me smoking it. I would absolutely recommend it. I mean, I think anybody and everybody that ever wants to travel or experience anything should smoke Amanita. Mm-hmm. And you should experiment with different levels of it. Start small, start easy, stack it in a smoke blend. I've got how I make my smoke blends on my website. So I sell them, but I also teach you how to make everything that I sell. And try it that way. Then smoke it just ground up and in a pipe, and then keep smoking more and more and more of it, because you will meet the elders. It was hard to smoke it because I did it in a too small of a pipe, and it burned too hot and it was burning my throat. So use a water pipe or use an herb vape, and I absolutely recommend it. If y'all want me to smoke it on camera and do higher doses of it, I'll do that again. I've had a couple of questions about that, but it's my preferred method of using it when I want to get wisdom from what I believe might be something outside of myself or my higher self. I want to smoke it to do that.
I've got a question here from Blair69. Says, do I have any advice to smoke the God molecule? So I guess talking about 5-MeO DMT. Yeah, mate. So the first bit of advice I would give there is, don't do the toad venom version. You can get the synthetic sort of 5-MeO, which I think is, I've tried both, and I would say I feel there is something exploitative about what's going on with the toads at the moment. I mean, they are kind of becoming endangered in some places because they're getting over milked, because there are cartels forming around sort of milking these toads. So that would be my first bit of advice, is just get the synthetic stuff so that you can leave the toads alone. But yeah, I would say in terms of advice of how to do it, start small. Like, start very fucking small. It's the dosages are nothing like an NDMT. It's like the tiniest amount blows your mind. So you really want to start with something like I would say 5 milligrams or something like that. So that's 0.005 milligrams. It's potent, and I think the best way of doing it is to use the e-mesh, which I've got a video on. So yeah, I would say it's be careful with it and treat it with respect. It's fucking potent.
While you're looking, I want to say I'm doing the free workshop this Friday for the Psychedelic Society of San Francisco, and I left my link tree in the comments. If you want to sign up for it, it's free. Might as well do it. And then in July, I'm doing a 3-session workshop, and we're going to go a little more in depth about the Amanita, and you can ask questions and all that in those 3 sessions. And then those will be on a Monday, and every Friday after that we're having like a tea where we can talk about what happened in the workshop on Monday, and it's more for asking more questions and talking to each other about it. And then I'm doing an 8-week workshop starting in August, going through August and September, where we actually work through microdosing, and everyone in the class will be microdosing or not, whatever they want to do. But we talk about the Amanita mushroom in every detail about how it changes you. And we will go through that step by step over like an 8-week period. And then I was on the Mushroom Hour podcast, and that's airing in a couple of weeks. And I'm about to record the Adventures Through the Mind.
Oh, with James Jeffo.
Yeah. He had technical difficulties when we were supposed to do it a couple of weeks ago. So I think I'm lined up for some time here in a couple of weeks. And I'm really looking forward to that. So that'll be cool.
Yeah,
I don't know when that's going to air. I don't know how backlogged he is, for getting things uploaded or whatever.
Yeah, I think he's pretty quickly. But yeah, I've talked to James a couple of times now and did a panel with him a while ago. And he's, very, very interesting guy, very deep thinker. So yeah, I'm sure you'll enjoy that one. I got a question here from Gawilimon, who's asking about the research I just mentioned. Does he have any of his work online? So I've done a couple of interviews with him, Gawilimon, and so his name's Andre Gomez Emilson. He's from the Qualia Research Institute. I think that I did one a few episodes back in my Adeptus and Friends sort of series. So check that out. But he's got his own YouTube channel, which I think I can't remember if it's just called Andre Emilson. But I'll post a link to it later on. But he's worth checking out. He's mind-bogglingly brilliant guy, very very deep thinker about the science of consciousness and that kind of stuff. And then I think Gulab Jaman, that's another question. Saying, are your free workshops on your website or through YouTube?
Go to my link tree. I just dropped it again, and the link for the workshop should be the first thing on the link tree.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I think this is probably a good place to tie it up. We've been going for an hour and 40 minutes now.
We always get into these long discussions, and I get so serious, and I'm like, I really want to laugh, smoke some Amanita and just.
I know we should do. Maybe we should.
Stupid bullshit instead of all this serious stuff.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. But maybe I don't know. It's really try and do something a bit more flippant next time. I don't know. I don't feel like we've gone too.
Way too long to talk, and then all this stuff has happened. We've done all these entheogens and had all these life experiences and stuff, and then we've got so much to talk about.
Well, that's actually. I mean, before we sign off, then let's explore that a little bit. Because how do you find that blend then, or that the part of you that is you as as a person having a spiritual experience, and then the part of you that is you as a presenter, a reporter on these experiences? Do you find those two sort of collide sometimes? Like, because sometimes I'll tell you where I'm going with this. Sometimes I find it tricky to make time for just doing the things I want to do. Like, okay, should I just take 6 weeks off now and just not make any videos and just go back to being regular Rob, just, you know, being a sort of psychonaut sort of thing? But then whenever I'm doing it, then I always feel the urge to talk about them, and it kind of becomes hard to take that time off just to, be me. And I think that's one of the reasons I like going on retreat so much, because it forces me to do that. Then it's like, no, you are in the middle of the jungle. You've got to disconnect from it all for a while. Do you find that, or do you have any similar experiences?
Well, I live with woods, so I have this new practice now after I did Amanita 2 years ago, that I take breaks regularly. So if I'm in a deep gamma brainwave flow state for 2 hours and I pop back out of it and I've just gotten all this work done, I'll go lay in the bed, and with a good tea and watch TikTok for 30 minutes and just unplug and decompress. And then if I'm going to do an entheogen, then I create space around it where I tidy up my work and I close my office door and I won't look back in here, and I'll enter into the intention phase. And then I'll set aside, another whole day afterward to process, and I'll do loving things, nurturing things, cook or something creative or whatever. So I'm always taking breaks every day to stay grounded. Yeah. Because that's just what I feel like I need to do. But also, like, I'll travel because I'm in it. I'm in the woods. An hour from here is an iconic world-class river for kayaking with whitewater rapids, and I can go in any direction to get to amazing rivers and amazing beauty. So that's easy. Yeah, I can just wake up one day and decide I need to drop out today, and I just leave everything at home and go.
Yeah, I think it ties back into the whole sort of integration thing we talked about at the beginning. I think just for people to make time for themselves when they have these experiences to do that is priceless. I think it cannot be underestimated, that sort of making a bit of time for yourself. But yeah, I must admit, I struggle with it sometimes, especially when I've just had like one of these incredibly powerful experiences. Just like, I've got to talk about this. It's like, no, man, you need to shut the fuck up. You need to sit with this for a bit. And that's something I struggle backwards and forth with. Anyway, I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. Everyone, give it up for Amanita Dreamer. Check out the links that she's posted. And I'll make sure that they're in the description text as well as in the chat text. And dude, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Oh my God, it's so good seeing you. I'm honestly working on trying to get to Europe in the fall, so I may come see you. Cool. Well, yeah. I mean, if you get something sorted, let me know and we'll sort something out. Cool. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks for all your comments and on your questions, and we'll catch you next time.